Okay, it's 9 a.m. Singapore time, 7 p.m. Canadian, Sylvia's time. So good morning, good evening, if there's any good afternoon, wherever you guys are. Thank you for joining us today. It's very exciting to see that all of you joining from all over. Sylvia, thank you for finally accepting the invitation to come on live to join us all over the world. I'm getting Sylvia to share her views, her insights. What is the view about COVID? And right now with the vaccine, so I'm really grateful to have Sylvia to come on board and discuss or share together with me today.
Just to make it clear
Yep.
that I am speaking from my own perspective on these things. So my perspective is how all of this ties into consciousness and how consciousness is the creator of our reality and how we observe things. That's what we're creating. So that's the perspective that I'm going to be speaking from.
Yes.
There we are again, right there. That's actually in our living room here in Cochrane. So anyway, I will introduce myself very briefly for some of those who have not experienced me before. I am a senior advanced body talk instructor. I'm also currently a senior Mindscape instructor. And what I've been working on is creating something that I call the HelioSoul system. It's sort of an expansion on the body talk work that I've been doing over all of these years, which has been quite extensive. I started teaching back in 2002 full time, and I've traveled all over the world teaching. That's how I met Irene and a whole bunch of you who are gracing us with your presence today. And of course, also all over Canada here locally. I have been also practicing consistently throughout the same time. So I know how powerful these techniques and the work is. I've been able to see miracles happen. And also I've been able to test out on my clients some of my other concepts that I've now integrated into the extension of my work, the HelioSoul system. So yeah, that's about it. And for those of you who are interested, you can read a little bit more about my background when you go to the websites that will post up at the end of this discussion. So that's me in a nutshell. Irene.
Well, I also started this journey with Sylvia, obviously. So I've trained under her. I've taken all the courses at least once with her. We travel very interestingly. So I teach the Body Talk Access Fundamentals and Mindscape as well. And over the past 2 years is also starting to develop and test one of my self-discovery course called Destiny Compass. So we will also share with you towards the end of the discussion. That's also me in a nutshell. So let's begin the discussion today to see what we have got in store for you. This is how the discussion is going to go on. So we will be talking, both of us. Probably Sylvia will start. And then if I have my views or perspective, I will just jump in at the same time.
So the topic that Irene wanted to talk about was this whole COVID-19 pandemic. And it really is unprecedented in our time what this novel virus has created in our reality. It seems to be something that has affected almost every country. Every person has somehow been touched by the virus. Some more than others, but it does seem to be very pervasive around the whole globe. And there's not really a lot known about it. They're still learning about the virus from a scientific perspective. There's all sorts of political controversy around it and so on. And that's not really what we're going to look at today. What we're going to look at is how the stress that's being created is actually causing the problems for individual people. And then we're also going to look at the consciousness of this vaccine that, you know, all these countries are racing to try to develop and be the first to develop, and they're touting it as, you know, the only solution to the virus. And you know, just looking at how really that bigger picture is not necessarily what we should be focusing on. We should be focusing on ourselves, our own way of dealing with stress, and that involves some self-care issues.
Yeah, that's right. At the beginning of the pandemic, we keep hearing the propaganda as stay calm, don't panic. And I go like, yes, it's easier said than done. Most of us who have some self-care tools, we can use those tools practically to help us calm ourselves down. For people who have no self-care tools, it's like, how do I stay calm? How could I not be like being absorbed by all the environmental stress in the beginning, even though it looks like things are a little bit more stable? But what about the underlying stress, the emotional and belief system that it has amplified or developed in us? So we want to see how else we can do and take care of ourselves from self-care perspective.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, so
we're going to look at stress because we do know something about that. We know that stress is the underlying factor in almost all diseases, all symptoms, all issues. And it's triggered usually by something that is in our environment that we have some kind of a belief about, and it's a response by the sympathetic nervous system to deal with any kind of danger to our safety. And what it activates are the sympathetic nervous system's 6 F's. They're called flight, fright, freeze, faint, fright, and fawn. So we are wired to probably respond to stress in a dominant way, but also in some of these other ways. So flight means the nervous system gets us ready to flee the danger, to basically run away from it, get away from it. If we feel trapped and can't flee, then we may then end up fighting. We fight the danger. There are occasions when people tend to freeze, and the freezing is based on the idea that if I don't move, nobody will see me and the danger will move away. Fainting is where somebody literally loses consciousness. I remember my youngest son, this was his dominant way of dealing with stress. He would look around, and if he didn't like where he was, he'd be out, gone. So there are some people that literally will lose consciousness. Or the other way that this shows up is they get tired and they want to sleep. It's like, if I'm not there, then I'm not aware of the danger and it can't hurt me. Fright is more about hiding from the danger. And then fawning is when the person will agree with whatever it is that is the danger. It's like I'll make a friend of the danger, and if that dangerous situation sees me as a friend, then I'll be safe. So there are all these different ways of dealing with stress. Like I said, it usually gets triggered by somebody's belief systems that there is actually something dangerous out there in the first place. It causes a fear response that there's danger out there. And in the case of the COVID situation, the fear of the danger that we're facing is actually coming at us from a lot of different sides. But primarily from the duality of people on one side saying you must listen to the science and the vaccines are the only way to deal with this. And then on the other side, you've got, well, you know, the vaccine is going to be actually more dangerous and cause more side effects and problems than the actual virus. So there's fear being generated on both sides of the debate on how to deal with the COVID threat. And this is what is causing this massive stress in people all over the world.
That's right. Yeah, we are also seeing right now it's already 6 months so-called down the road with COVID. A lot of people has already learned how to cope with the actual situation. That would also be something potentially dangerous, right, Sylvia? We keep talking about this word called the coping mechanism, when the body is in one or two or more of the 6 F's situation.
When you're coping, you're not living. You are in a chronic state of being aware of what's going on and trying to control it. As we know, if you've studied under me, that you know, we don't actually have any control over things except for possibly how we are reacting to something and how we are thinking about what's going on, what our attachments are to our beliefs. Can we let them go? And hopefully we'll talk about that a little bit more.
The whole holding on and creating or even start to accumulate very subtle emotional stress that we might not even be aware of at this stage.
And holding all of that in our bodies. And we'll see with one of the next slides about how physiologically that happens.
There you go.
Yes. So once the sympathetic nervous system has been activated, it causes biochemical changes at the cellular level in all organs and systems. So what happens is that the amygdala, the limbic brain, the emotional brain that is triggered by the fear of some kind of danger, communicates with the hypothalamus. The hypothalamus creates the molecules of emotion that set off the pituitary to release a hormone that goes through the bloodstream and then affects the adrenals to produce adrenaline and stress hormones like cortisol. And then these are the things that get sent out to every cell in the body to alert the whole system that there is something dangerous that we need to be aware of. And all of this happens very quickly, and it is meant to help the body-mind cope temporarily with the stressor. So either to run away or to fight it or whatever. And then hopefully the stressor gets resolved, and then the amygdala complex is calmed down, the hypothalamus calms down, the pituitary calms down, and the adrenals stop producing its chemicals. And then in that environment, then the body can release the emotional molecules and the hormones, send it all off to the liver to be processed and eliminated from the body. That's the way it's supposed to work.
Which is not very, you said supposed to, right? But it's normally not the way it worked in a regular situation when we get stressed, which I want to say always, but a lot of times I emphasize, especially when people come for private sessions, I said, when you come for sessions, it is great that we help you get past that difficult times, the stressful times. But the most even amazing time for you guys to come for a session is when things are fine, right? Is when things are okay. That is when true healing is at its optimal, and we can do so much more to optimize and to really bring you to the next level, not merely to get you out of the coping mechanism. Do you agree with that, Sylvia, or what's
yes,
your take?
Because then we can deal with the true underlying cause of what's creating the stress in the first place.
Yeah,
absolutely.
Correct. Even including myself, once in a while I catch myself going like, well, I'm fine today, I don't need this and that. And then over the years, over the 14 years doing this work, I go like, no, it's actually when I'm at my best, that's when the real work happens. That's when growth happens, not fixing problems, but we are so conditioned to fix symptoms.
Well, that's right. I mean, that's the Western way, and actually even the Eastern way of dealing with things now, is that you go when you're not feeling well to the doctor or to the massage therapist or to the acupuncturist or the body talk practitioner or whatever. And yes, you're right. If we could convince people to work on themselves at that consciousness level, which is where everything actually starts, then we wouldn't even be in a position to be stressed out when there isn't anything there, in fact, to be stressed out about. So we can go on to the next slide. Yeah, so here's one of the problems right now, is that the stress response is supposed to kick in until the stressor has been dealt with. And right now we're hearing in the news constantly that COVID is going to be around for a long time. That, again, those people that are advocating for a vaccine, they're saying it's going to take a while. And there's really no end in sight to when this situation will resolve. It could take at least a year or two before we even look anything normal again in our lives. So what this causes is a continuous triggering of the nervous system's response to stress. So we're having our bodies continually being inundated with stress hormones and emotional molecules. Every time you hear the news and they're talking about it constantly, it's an automatic response. And this chronic situation where the body cannot release its emotions, cannot release the active memories, cannot release the stress hormones, which have gone down into the cells and changed how those cells are operating, that chronic situation is going to lead eventually to imbalances in all the cells which make up the organs, which then make up the systems. And we end up with attracting all sorts of symptoms and illnesses.
That's right. And I normally, those of you either who've heard me before, I normally like to use computer as analogy. And this is a time, as Sylvia is saying, things will take we don't know how long. But one thing for sure, there's a lot of changes already over the past 6 months. And one thing I felt, which is very critical, is to help our body to constantly update itself, like the computer upgrades and updates we do on our devices. And this is one of the best time that we can do updates as well to our body and emotions and especially at the mind, you can say so, because a lot of us have changed the way we work. Like right now, we're doing this Zoom webinar with Sylvia, and Zoom is the new norm already, and probably it's going to be the new norm for a long, long time.
For quite a long time, yeah. Yeah, and the chronic stress, when there's no break from it, we're going to get issues in like wherever we've got weaknesses in the body, but particularly it will affect the brain itself. There'll be a lot of, and we can see it even now, a lot of people having emotional and mental issues just from being quarantined. Or here in North America, there's been this stay at home where people were not allowed to, go out. I just heard also that a lot of people who had been in the midst of a divorce, they had decided, that they were going to leave their spouse. Now they were forced to stay together, and all sorts of emotional and mental issues coming out of that. The immune system will also be specifically targeted. And of course, the immune system is what we naturally have in terms of cells that look out for things that don't belong, like viruses, whether they're old viruses or these novel viruses. Our systems are set up to be able to say, hey, that doesn't belong, and come up with a way of getting rid of the virus or any other organism for that matter. And also in this case, the respiratory system. So if the respiratory system is being affected with this stressful situation, then we're not going to get in enough, from a Western perspective, we're not going to get enough oxygen to our cells, or we're not going to be able to release all the carbon dioxide that's being produced by our cells. And from an Eastern perspective, breathing is about breathing in qi and energy that way. And of course, that's going to, in the end, also be harmful to all the cells in the body if they can't get enough oxygen or release carbon dioxide or get enough qi or prana. And I'm sure you've seen some other things too, Irene, and your clients.
Yeah, the oxygen, you say, on the consciousness perspective, is also to adapt to change. It's not like they don't want to change, but the underlying belief system is putting up a fight, a resistance, and a deeper down in our consciousness or our belief system. Like, it is difficult to change. I can't do this. I can't do that. So as much as they want to, that is very, very stressful that I'm seeing in times.
And things just shut down.
Exactly.
So, and I already started to indicate that chronic stress doesn't just affect the physical body that we think of in terms of Western anatomy and physiology, but it does actually also reflect in the energetic body. When we talk about top-down causation, and this is why we have to look at it at the deepest level, at the supramental level, because whatever is going on there will sink down into the mental body level and then from there down to the energetic level of body, or the vital body, and then from there into the physical. So yeah, the whole system can get messed up. If you go to the next slide, I think we have some examples where, for example, the chakras can be thrown out of balance, particularly the lower three that are involved in grounding us in the material world. So if the root or base chakra gets disrupted, then there's a feeling of loss of security. And I mean, when you look again around the world, in some of these countries where thousands of people have lost their jobs, and they're now wondering how they're going to survive, how are they going to eat or get a roof above their head. Same thing with the sacral or this sexual chakra. There's a feeling of loss of control in a lot of people as that has been disrupted. And as I mentioned with the divorced couples, a lot of relationships, sexual relationships, are going to become dysfunctional. The solar plexus, which is all about personal power, that's been disrupted. I mean, when you listen to the news and you hear about how the media is controlling things, or the politicians are controlling things, or what do you call it, the drug companies, the pharmaceutical companies, that they're controlling things. No wonder there's a sense of a loss of personal power. All of these things, and then even higher up you could probably also find how those chakras are being disrupted.
That's right. The lower chakras would, like Sylvia, you're saying, the more related to the physical or material world. So if we're able to get more clarity and understand what is happening from a consciousness perspective, which reflect in the three upper chakras, you'll see that we are more intuitive in making the change. We feel more guided, and we don't have to constantly feel back to the 6 F's of the insecurities and fears and stuff, isn't it?
So in that way, integrating
That's right.
all the chakras once again.
Yeah, it's almost the word that we say, putting us back into balance again.
Yes. If we look at some of the other energetic aspects of the body that can be disrupted, the 5 elements, where we have the Sheng cycle and the Ko cycle, they need to be balanced. And we can see that they're being disrupted. Same thing with the microcosmic orbit, the fire cycle, the water cycle, causing issues. Wei Qi being weakened, and Wei Qi is the energetic immune system, keeping things out energetically, like the frequencies that are not compatible with the frequencies of the rest of the body. The aura can also be out of balance, and it is sort of a reflection of the chakra system. So people who are able to see the aura, they can actually see where these disruptions have occurred.
Yeah, so it's quite obvious the theme or the pattern that Sylvia and myself were trying to say is there is a lot of change happening constantly. How do we help our body adjust, adapt, and bring it back to a new balanced?
And for that, we need to look at where stress actually comes from. So I've already mentioned that it is your belief systems, your thoughts, it's your interpretation of what is going on that will either trigger the fear response or keep a calm demeanor. And your beliefs, of course, so if you listen to your self-talk, you can hear your thoughts. They act as a lens through which you observe. So if you already have, for example, a belief system that vaccines are bad, then every time you hear on the news anything about vaccines, that's already going to trigger the stress response, because that's how you are interpreting at a very deep level what is happening and what is dangerous. And as we know, that what you observe is what you're creating. Pardon me, you take over.
Just gonna sip of water. Where were you? Your release of stress comes from obviously what we perceive, and then we will. General, what I hear is attract. We don't really attract. It's just we resonate from that particular resonance of frequency, and therefore we see the events that matches our beliefs. So our interpretation, like Sylvia is saying, it's very much influencing our reality. So your thoughts, your actions, your environment, another way to say it is a reflection of your inner world or your inner reality.
And the thing is that we have, like, these beliefs are actually not ours. We have absorbed them from other people around us. So it all depends on, you know, what we hear, who we believe. You know, are these people experts, or you know, like our parents, and media. Like, everybody around us does have an influence on what it is that in the end we believe. And then what happens is that we actually create an environment where what we believe is highlighted. That's what you were trying to say. So I'm going to let you talk about this, the consciousness of the virus, what it is symbolic of, because I know you like talking about this.
Yes, I've been talking about this for at least 3 or 4 of my different talks. The consciousness of virus, from our perspective of doing what we do, the concept of a virus, let's make a comparison between virus and bacteria. What bacteria is when it enters our body, our immune system can, what do you call that, better tackle it, because it can recognize the bacteria and then create immune system to either destroy it or fight it. A virus is very, very interesting, because when virus enters into our body, symbolic or metaphoric aspects is like it takes over our cells. So I use the word, it hijacks our cells like a pirate. So back to the whole thing with either self-care or, you know, growing ourselves. If we are weak at the identity level, if we're someone easily influenced by news or by other people's opinions, which means our own integrity is weak and we are more susceptible to be hijacked. So there's also a concept of virus, right? It has a tendency to come into our body. It takes over our cell. That's why, technically speaking, there is no cure to treat viruses besides the vaccine, to mimic the problem, to allow the immune system to build the antibody to respond to it or to destroy it. So that was this interesting concept with the consciousness of virus is as good as the way to, we know in terms of intellectually, we say to strengthen our immune system, but what do we do to strengthen our immune system? One way in terms of symbolically to strengthen your identity. And Sylvia later can add on that. It's not to strengthen your ego perspective, but to be more aligned, to be more congruent within ourselves. Yes, Sylvia.
Yes. And of course, one of the ways to become more centered is to start to release some of our attachments to our belief systems around all of this. Because if we get, it doesn't matter which of the opinions we attach ourselves to, we're still going to have our lives hijacked.
That's right. Just to finish off the bullet points, so this pandemic generally hijacked our lives. It takes over how we function, operate, what we can or cannot do. Of course, not everyone is affected in a not a pleasant way. There are people who are less affected. Just a recap from the earlier slides at the lower chakra, that who hasn't got issues with survivals. They are the one who is thriving. They are the one who can pivot very easily and thrive and ride on a wave and actually grow from there. I know such friends who has really benefited, and even I'm hearing more recently, this is the best time in our lives that we can really do. The common theme is like we can do the things we want to do for a long, long time. So this category of people are not easily hijackable by an environmental crisis.
Mm-hmm. That's a good point.
So the result of all these changes or uncertainties, or when we least expect it, is this common word called fear.
Fear, and you can see that it is affecting to a large extent the majority of the population on the planet. Like you said, there are some people that are not being sort of sucked into this, but the majority are experiencing fear. It seems to be very invasive. So, as we mentioned, like the two polarities, if you believe that the virus is dangerous and it's causing death, that emotional charge, that fear, the charge of it, will act as a magnet. And because of the way the fear creates the changes in the body through the sympathetic nervous system, you will then be susceptible to attracting the virus. On the other hand, if you believe vaccines as the only answer, as it's being touted, if you believe that they're harmful and you fear that you're going to be forced to get one, then that emotional charge will also act as a magnet. And again, because of the way that it works in the body, it'll make you susceptible to experiencing the side effects that you're so afraid of. And the vaccine issue actually goes back further. It has a long-standing history where there are a lot of people out there who claim that vaccines are bad, and it causes autism and all these other issues. And I know as a practitioner, I'm often asked by young mothers, what do I do? My child needs to be vaccinated in order to be able to attend school, but vaccines are bad, and so on and so forth. And so I've had to think about this, and what I've come up with is that, again, it's the fear that's generated that is the issue. And what you need to do is just let go of the fear, the attachment that this is such a bad thing. Because when you think about it, consciousness creates everything. Consciousness has created our bodies. Consciousness has created the virus. Consciousness has created, will create the vaccine. And if we go to the philosophical understanding, we know that all of that is part of the illusion. It's all part of Maya. But if we let go of our fears, then we're not making ourselves susceptible to attracting, problems. And we can take practical steps. We can then say, you know what, in this illusion, in Maya, if the child needs to have a vaccine in order to go to school, then allow the child to have the vaccine. And, you can do with our work, we can do preparation formulas to help the body assimilate the vaccines and actually have the benefit of it without the adverse effects, if there are indeed any. And it's the same argument I would give for this vaccine that they're going to be coming up with for the COVID-19 virus. Like if it's a practical thing that your workspace, if you're not going to be working from home, but if you're going to be in an office or working with say people in a classroom, if you're an instructor or whatever, if the rule is that you need to have the vaccine, that's a practical step in the illusion. But if you don't have any fear attached to it, then nothing happens. So to me, this is the way that we need to be approaching all of this, is from this consciousness perspective. If we are creating our own reality, we can do that within the context of the larger consensual reality. So the larger consensual reality is that there is this virus out there, there are issues with it, a lot of fear, but within our own space, we can create this bubble where we're not affected by any of that because we just don't have any fear around it. And to me, this goes back to that there's a saying, and excuse me if I'm not quoting it quite correctly, but it's, walking through the shadow of the valley of death and you fear no evil, because even though there's all sorts of stuff swirling around you, it's not affecting you. And so there's nothing then to be afraid of. So we do have a number of techniques that can help with this kind of work, where you're releasing your attachments to your belief systems and thereby releasing the fear that is actually at the root of the problems. And that was a long talk. Irene, have you got something else to add?
I just want to share one of the examples from my earlier days. It was my first year of practicing body talk when I learned it. What happens is, there's this client is an adult. She's also a new parent. So what happens? She came for the session. I did actually say that, we balance out this vaccine in your body. And that's why now I'm teaching things differently from my own experience, right? So what she actually told me was, I never had a vaccine. So as a new practitioner, the first thing that came to my mind is, oh my God, I did something wrong. It's like, oh my God, I'm so new. I did something wrong. I didn't get it correctly. But anyway, because we're inclined, we're still in the zone. I'm like, okay, that's what we have done. Let's see what's, any shifts that takes place in the next couple of days. Keep me posted, da, da, da. And then interesting enough, she actually came back for a follow-up. in about 2 to 3 weeks time. And guess what she actually told me? First thing, she confirms she never had a vaccine. And I was like, oh my God, right? But what she actually revealed was when she was young, and at the time that she was supposed to have a vaccine, there was a huge fight between her parents. And it's interesting because of the fight and because she wanted to subconsciously comply, the body perceived as if she had the vaccine. And then only I realized when we were sharing, that was almost the same time they were considering, like her and her husband is considering whether they want to vaccine their child. Many years after, when I started to teach, when I look back, it's like, well, interesting, isn't it? We may not even have the actual situation or the actual experience, but the fear of that, it is so intense that we keep it with us, and that is how we live our lives, fearing whether it is good, it is bad, and all this duality stuff that shapes our reality and could create problem with the husband. So that was a very interesting.
That's a great example, a great story. Yeah. So one of the other things that helps then, of course, is to reframe what is going on. And you were sort of indicating this a little bit earlier, Irene. So we know that everything happens for a reason. Again, if you've taken a course with me before, you know I always say we are born to be miserable. That the way that we are set up anatomically and physiologically, we are designed to look at things in a negative way, and it is sort of the purpose of life to take that negativity, the adversity, the problems that confront us, and use them to overcome our thinking processes and how we look at things. So from this situation that we find ourselves in now with this novel virus, we can say, well, what have we learned? Like individually, what have I learned from this situation? And what are the opportunities for growth? And then also, not only for ourselves, but what is it that we can do from what we've learned to help maybe our children, to also look at, you know what, this may not be the only time a novel virus hits us. It is quite possible that we're going to have other calamities happening like this. I know that there was this one Qigong master that I follow, and he said this is the first of 3 viruses that will be spread around the world like this. So how can we learn from the experience that we've had now, and how can we prepare ourselves, our children, for anything that will happen again in the future? So that's what we can look at next. And as I sort of mentioned already, taking practical steps. So, people might say, well, that's all well and good to say, yeah, you just have to let go of your attachments to beliefs. You just need to let go of your fear, but that's more difficult than easy to do. So even if you can't let go of all of your beliefs, there are still some practical steps that can be taken. And this is where the self-care techniques come in. Because when we support the health of the body-mind, it will naturally defend itself against viruses as well as other things, the way that Irene mentioned earlier. So for example, some of the natural defense mechanisms I've got listed here. There are some non-specific immune actions that can be supported. So for example, we have a mucus lining starting from our nose, and it goes down into the rest of the respiratory system. And it's very sticky, so that when we breathe in, and there are particulates in the air, they can get stuck on the mucus. And also we have little hairs, little cilia, that line the upper respiratory tract and the lower one. So the upper hairs, they kind of brush whatever is stuck in the mucus lining down to the back of our throat. And in our lungs, in the airways, the cilia, they brush anything that has gone down that far up to the back of the throat. And then, of course, we swallow it. And don't ask me how many pints of mucus we swallow a day, because it'll just gross you out. But then when we've swallowed it, we've got acid in the stomach that will already start to kill things off. And so on with some of these other non-specific things. We have bacteria on the skin that will also help to keep things out. The microbiome in the gut, a part of its responsibility is also to make sure that things that don't belong in the system get absorbed. And we've got tears that will wash out particulates. So we have a number of these non-specific immune structures that, if we are healthy, will do their jobs. And then we also have the specific immune system, and that goes to like the B cells and the T cells that will either make antibodies against something that has come in to the system past all that non-specific immune stuff. And or it with the T cells, they actually travel out and seek out what doesn't belong and poke holes in it, or gobble it up, the macrophages and so on. And even on the energetic level, if you are supporting your health, then the Wei Qi, the energetic immune system, will also stay strong and not even allow any frequencies in close to the physical body. This is what the self-care is all about. If you take care of yourself, your systems will be able to keep everything balanced and healthy. So supporting the body-mind's health, it can be physical, like what foods you are eating. Let's not get into a discussion on that, because there are so many different theories again about what foods to eat and so on. So again, if you believe that whatever diet and program that you follow is healthy, you know what? It will be healthy for you. There are supplements. Again, if you believe that there are certain supplements out there that will help with the different endocrine glands or other organs, they will help. Exercise. Keeping the muscular system, well, also the internal systems through exercise, keeping them healthy, like through Tai Chi or Qigong or something like that. Or the health can also be supported energetically through frequencies, sound frequencies, listening to crystal bowls. Or tuning forks, or light. That's sort of where the Helio Soul system that I've started to create has its grounding in, is looking at it from light and sound frequencies and color as well. Or meditation. Again, working in a different way to change the thinking so that the energetic body can change. And we do, and when I say we, I mean Irene and I, do have some energetic solutions that we can briefly introduce to you. And I'm going to let Irene talk first about what she has.
Right. So what I have generally, for simplicity, I break into two huge categories. One is called the self-care. The other one is called self-discovery. I believe most of it will come under these two big umbrellas. The first one that I have is called the Destiny Compass, which is developed by myself. I integrate the concepts of Mindscape, which belongs to the umbrella of quantum physics, and I integrate with Chinese metaphysics called Qi. So the gist of what Destiny Compass would do is literally strengthen your sense of identity. Destiny Compass aims to bring us back to our true identity rather than living in somewhat, I call it shadow identity, the roles that we play and stuff like that, to be aware of those. And then there are tools that you'll be guided to connect with your, you can call it subconscious, you can call it innate, you can call it whatever you want. That's the seed of who you are, or the unmanifested or unrealized potential or identity. So that's Destiny Compass. And Body Talk Access, it's a one-day workshop that we are actually helping our body to find the alignment again. Body Talk Access helps to get our body out of that 6F mode and then do the healing on its own, because our body actually knows how to do all the self-healing. It's because we have gone through stress in our lives. Either we realize or we don't. So the 5 techniques that you will learn in Access is going to help you do exactly just that. Mindscape is almost like a huge 2 days workshop. You get a lot of tools. So it's nice to have Destiny Compass to help you clarify some of your goals. And then when you do Mindscape, it will give you even more tools for both. You can say both self-care and self-discovery. So that is some of the basic course or techniques that I have to help our body get into shape, per se. And let's hear from Sylvia, the interesting new courses and techniques that she has created and tested over the past 2 or 3 years.
Yeah.
Sylvia.
So obviously, with Body Talk Access and Mindscape, I am big supporters of those. Having actually been one of the people to come up with the Access course, creating it with John Veltheim and Mindscape, I absolutely like it. Everybody should be doing it. Now, the new techniques, and I'll talk about the bottom one first, Agape Mind, is sort of like Mindscape, except that it is based on principles that I have incorporated through the HelioSoul technique and the HelioSoul system. So I don't know if you can see behind me. This is the Agape Mind. I don't know if you can see it. Let me just move my camera a little bit. It might be too small to see, but this is the equivalent from a different perspective of getting back to who we are. And the concept that I use is that we are light beings. We are the same consciousness as universal consciousness. We are the same light that is in the 0 point field or in the absolute. I mean, there's so many different ways of describing this, but in simplest terms, we are light beings that are vibrating at a lower vibration. And so the HelioSoul technique brings us back into that alignment, which is like I said, the equivalent that Irene was talking about in terms of coming back to who we really are. The system then is also based on that, and this is it behind me. It's a adjunct to the body talk. It sort of stands on the shoulders of body talk. A much more sort of emphasis in a clinical situation on looking for the consciousness bit, looking for what are the attachments that the person has to whatever the beliefs are that are leading to the imbalances that they're experiencing and releasing those. There is more information about how to get to these courses. If you want to go to the next slide, Irene. Yeah, so you want to reduce your stress, take practical steps for self-care, and in that way you can stay healthy. That's kind of the summary. So how to find any courses if you're interested in any of these, and that if they appeal to you, you can go to Irene's website at bodytalk.com.sg, and I have two websites. You can go to the heliosoulsystem.org. That one gives you an overview, and also the course schedule, because I do have several instructors around the world that are teaching these courses, and you can see what's being offered. And then my personal website is innatehealing.net, and that's how you access the courses that I'm responsible for. So that's it from us in terms of introducing some of our ideas. So we can. Well, I want to thank everyone who came to listen. It's, from my perspective, just so refreshing to be able to connect with everybody again and, share our views. And again, you may not agree with me even right now, and that's okay too.
So, okay, thank you. Thanks, everyone. It's nice to see you guys again.
Bye-bye.
Bye.